Have you ever asked yourself what really happens when an empath finally stops pleasing everyone? Most people think an empath without constant giving becomes cold or selfish. But Carl Jung discovered the exact opposite. When the empath stops people-pleasing and starts seeing the truth, they don't lose their compassion. They gain strength, clarity, and psychological sovereignty. And that's what we're exploring today. What happens when the empath stops pleasing everyone and starts seeing the truth? Before we dive deeper, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below if you've ever felt drained by always putting others first. Your experience as an empath matters, and your comment may encourage someone else who's walking the same path. But Carl Jung discovered the exact opposite. When the empath stops people-pleasing and starts seeing the truth, they don't lose their compassion. They gain strength, clarity, and psychological sovereignty. And that's what we're exploring today. What happens when the empath stops pleasing everyone and starts seeing the truth? Before we dive deeper, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below if you've ever felt drained by always putting others first. Your experience as an empath matters, and your comment may encourage someone else who's walking the same path. Think about this for a moment. You've had another long day. You've carried other people's problems like heavy bags on your back. You said yes to things you didn't want to do. You smiled even though you were hurting inside, just to keep the peace. You held space for everyone else's stress until it felt like your own body was on fire. And then something changes. You sit quietly, maybe late at night, and for the very first time, you don't just push through. You pause, you take a breath, and you ask yourself one simple question. What if I stopped? That question may seem small, but it's life-changing. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, said this is the moment an empath begins to wake up. He called it the beginning of consciousness, the moment you stop living on autopilot and start becoming aware of who you really are. For the empath, this pause is powerful. It's not just a moment of rest. It's the breaking point that becomes the breakthrough. It's the point where survival mode, or what I call survival sensitivity, begins to shift into conscious sensitivity. Survival sensitivity is when you've trained yourself to constantly tune into everyone else's feelings so you can avoid conflict, keep people happy, or stay safe. But conscious sensitivity is different. It's when you still feel deeply, but you finally start choosing when to give and when to hold back. It's the start of psychological sovereignty, taking your power back. Here's what Jung uncovered but few people talk about. The empath's gift of feeling everything isn't always a gift. It's often survival sensitivity, a trauma response disguised as compassion. Empaths think they're naturally selfless, but in reality, they've learned to survive by tuning into everyone else's needs at the expense of their own. When individuation begins, that illusion shatters. The awakening empath realizes, I am not responsible for carrying everyone's emotions. This realization is like a collision with the unconscious, and once it happens, there's no going back. Carl Jung taught that every single person carries what he called a shadow. The shadow is made up of all the parts of ourselves we push down, hide, or pretend aren't there. For many people, the shadow is filled with shame, fear, or insecurity. But for empaths, the shadow looks a little different. Beneath all the kindness and giving, there's often something they've been taught never to show. Rage. Deep, raw anger from years of being used, manipulated, and taken for granted. This anger has been buried so long that even the empath themselves might not realize it's there. Now, here's the key. Meeting this shadow doesn't turn the empath into a cruel or selfish person. Instead, it makes them stronger and wiser. This is when the empath becomes consciously selective. They stop ignoring the red flags they used to overlook. They begin to see manipulation for what it is. They recognize emotional vampires, the people who drain their energy without giving anything back. And they finally learn the difference between someone in real need and someone who's creating drama to keep control. Jung called this process individuation, which is just another way of saying the journey into authenticity. For the awakening empath, it's about reclaiming all the hidden parts of themselves and using that energy to live as their true self, not the version of themselves the world trained them to be. So how do you know you're experiencing this transformation? Jung described it, and I call it the 8 signs of the awakening empath. Sign 1, the energy shift. Instead of your energy flowing outward to everyone else, it begins to flow back toward you. You stop absorbing others' bad moods. You stop feeling guilty about conserving your energy. Jung said it best. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Sign 2, the mask falls away. Jung called it the death of the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted. For empaths, this is the mask of being endlessly nice. The awakening empath drops this performance and starts expressing their real opinions, real preferences, and real limits. Sign 3, the projection returns. Empaths often project their own depth and compassion onto others, excusing bad behavior because they imagine hidden goodness. But individuation brings what I call projection recall. You stop projecting potential and start seeing reality. Sign 4, boundaries become sacred. Jung described individuation as building integrity with the unconscious. For the empath, this means finally saying no without guilt. This isn't selfishness, it's sacred selfishness. Sign 5, the guilt disappears. Years of guilt, guilt for having needs, guilt for resting, guilt for saying no, begins to evaporate. Jung explained that this happens when the shadow integrates. When you stop rejecting yourself, you stop apologizing for existing. Sign 6, authenticity over approval. The awakening empath stops performing for approval. They choose authenticity even when it costs them relationships. This is where authentic magnetism begins. When you stop trying to please everyone, you attract the right people. Sign 7, the healer heals themselves. Jung described the wounded healer, someone who helps others while avoiding their own pain. The awakening empath turns their healing inward, finally nurturing their inner child instead of caretaking everyone else. Sign 8, conscious connection. The final sign is what I call boundaried compassion, the ability to connect deeply without losing yourself. This is conscious sensitivity. You love without rescuing. You give without depletion. But Jung warned, individuation is not easy. He called it the night sea journey. For the empath, this feels like death, the death of the false self built on people-pleasing. You may lose friends. You may feel lonely. You may grieve old patterns. But what dies is the version of you that was never truly you. Jung said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." The awakening empath must descend into their shadow before rising into authentic selfhood. Jung understood that the mind and body are connected. For empaths, years of absorbing others' emotions leads to energetic toxicity, chronic fatigue, anxiety, even autoimmune issues. But when the empath stops being the emotional sponge of the world, the body begins to heal. The nervous system calms, sleep improves, health returns. Individuation always changes relationships. Some deepen, others fall away. The awakening empath begins a great relationship purge. Manipulative connections dissolve, while authentic ones thrive. Jung called this differentiation, the separation between neurotic attachment and genuine love. This stage can feel lonely, but Jung distinguished between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the pain of disconnection. Solitude is the joy of connection with yourself. The awakening empath learns to meet themselves, perhaps for the first time. The ultimate goal, Jung said, is the self, the wholeness of who you truly are. For the empath, this means integration, soft and strong, caring and boundaried, sensitive and sovereign. The empath who stops pleasing everyone doesn't lose their compassion. They finally include themselves in it. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's the journey of the awakening empath. And remember this, when the empath stops pleasing everyone and starts seeing the truth, they don't become selfish. They become sovereign. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video so more empaths can discover their true power.